Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Today I'm gonna talk about the Bad Bosses series I'm doing. I'm gonna tell you another story about a place that I worked at, and I had some horrible bosses. They were really horrible. It's one of the worst places I've ever worked at, and it was a manufacturing plant, and I was currently working at a pizza place, and it was low paying, and one of the people that worked there was friends with another friend, and those friends would come in and they would talk to this other girl, Mary, and we kind of became friends. And I asked Mary's friend, Laura, who worked at the manufacturing plant, can she get me a job there, because this place is so low paying. I want to get out of it. I need a better job. And she finally did get me hired there. And it was one of the most dangerous and most unsafe places that I ever worked at. They had just no concept of safety for employees. Like, there's a lot of heavy equipment there, and they would drive the forklifts at full speed, and they had these big metal mold things that they would put in the machines, and they weigh like 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. And there was this one guy who would drive real crazy on the forklifts, and he would lift it up and shove it in the racks and drop it. And one day he did that, and it crashed to the ground, and those molds cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they didn't fire him, though, which he was deemed so immature that they were asking for volunteers for the safety, for people to learn life-saving techniques. Like, back then, they did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I mean, with no apparatus or anything. I mean, if you had a heart attack or something, and you would be lucky if somebody knew how to do mouth-to-mouth, and they just did it mouth-to-mouth contact. But they deemed he was too immature, and they didn't want to train him to do it. So he didn't get to do the life-saving, and I'm glad, because he was disgusting. you know. And, well, this lady, Laura, she was a horrible group leader. She would drink. She had a substance abuse problem. And I didn't know all this before I became friends with her, but it like strained our friendship. And then she fell in love with me, and she wouldn't leave me alone. She was literally harassing me, like physically, and just, it became like an emotional, stressful thing for me. And that's the first time a woman had ever harassed me. It's happened before. It happened again later on, but she was the first woman that did that. And the culture was so horrible there. I was walking down the aisle, and she wouldn't leave me alone. She was like grabbing onto me. I was like, I pushed her away. Stop it, And one of the upper level, I don't know what he was really. He wasn't really like a boss, but an engineer or something like that. He was walking down the aisle, and he was like, hey, just yelled at me. I was like, hey, she won't keep her hands off me, And like, I was getting in trouble for stopping somebody from touching me, And it was just like, I wouldn't be compliant with it. And a lot of people like were like almost like mad at me. Like, I would like push her away, quit, stop, and they would get like, ugh, like mad at me. I was like, that's beyond stupid, And there was a guy there who was in love with her. He was married. He had 2 or 3 kids. And the more and more I worked there, I began to hate her. She was so pathetic, and eventually I cut our friendship off, and I was like, it was a new friendship. And once you learn something about people, and this took with only like a few months of me working there with her, I was like, I'm done with you. And he was in love with her, and he would defend her, and she would be drunk. One time she was so drunk that had to be sat down in a chair, and he was like taking care of her, putting like an ice pack on her head, or cold rag or something, and just stroking her arm. And it was just, oh my gosh. And I had seen his wife and his kids before. They had come to pick him up, and I was like, I asked him, why would you mess with this woman compared to that one? And this lady had lost custody of her child because she left her child in the company of a person who sells illegal substances, and left her for 3 days and just went off on a bender. And the people she left her with it was a horrible house, filled with horrible people doing horrible things. Left like a 3 or 4-year-old child in that condition. So I had no respect for it all. And at first I was kind of, trying to learn her situation, but after a while it's like, I don't care. And this woman was brought back by the owner of the company. He went to Las Vegas for a convention, found her in a seedy area of town, picked her up, and then brought her back. I mean, just literally, she packed a bag and came back from the convention with him, and he gave her a job in the plant as a group leader. Or she learned to run some of the machines, but then she was weaseled her way up to be a group leader. That to me is astounding. And he really didn't care about the business. It made a lot of money. It was a really profitable company, but they had a lot of waste because they didn't pay attention. There was a culture there that he didn't pay attention of just write down the production, and we don't care. All the supervisors and group leaders wanted was a big number that they could show that they shipped out to the customers, so they could, say it in a meeting. This is how much we ran on this shift. All the shifts would compete. The supervisors would compete against each other, and they treated the employees horrible. And we were supposed to get bonuses, and we never got the bonuses because the mechanics did not want to work. They didn't want to fix the machines, and they would intimidate the employees. And with me, I would get into fights with them, and it was just, horrible situation. And I always blamed it on them and say, and other people were scared to say that. I was like, you just don't work. You don't want to fix the machines. I mean, why are they paying you, And the group leader above Laura was, or I don't know what she was. There was like a level of, a few steps of supervisory positions. And this lady, she was one of the biggest pathological liars. I think she is neck and neck with the lady that I talked about from the nursing home. Those two people in all my life are two of the biggest pathological liars I've ever met. And she did horrible things. She was one of the worst people I've ever worked with. Her and the supervisor of the shift, his name is William Bill. He was drunk a lot. He was constantly sarcastic. He would be rude to people. People would think he was being nice because of the tone of his voice. He'd say, "Now what? What happened?" And he'd make you repeat it like 4 or 5 times. And the first few times that I talked to him, I thought, he's just weird. And then I realized he was just being a jerk, He's like, "Okay, now what?" Well, probably because he didn't do it right, or he would, and he would try to talk you into something just so he wouldn't have to work, so he wouldn't have to delegate authority. He didn't care. All he wanted was for you to run the machine all night long and write down that you ran X amount for 8 hours and write down a huge number. That's all they cared about, was a huge number. They didn't care that the product was bad and that it shouldn't be shipped out. And the companies would ship it back with notes saying this is wrong. And then they would blame it on the operator because you had to sign your box and the paperwork and everything. And so they would say, well, she didn't tell a mechanic and we didn't know. And it was like, I don't know how the owner could tolerate that for years and years. That went on decades. And he came to work drunk all the time. One time I was trimming something because it needed to be reworked, and I was using an X-Acto knife, and I was trimming it off, and I trimmed it off, and I went like that, and he came up behind me. I missed his eyeball by about that much. I was like, no, that's horrible, but he was so stinking drunk, and I was over there working, and he was just gonna get in my face and just, say something like, you need to hurry up, or something. He was gonna say something because he would do stuff like that. And then this jerk had the nerve to come to my house stinking drunk and ask me out. And he was like, well, I think he was about 29 or 30, and I was like 22, 21 or 22. And I told everybody at work the next day, I turned him down, of course, and I told everybody, and I said, do you know that blankety blank? He came to my house drunk yesterday, and he asked me on a date after the way he treats me, and everybody knew that I hated him, and I would curse at him, I would yell at him, and I mean, it was one of the wildest, weirdest places I've ever worked at. It's like anything would go on there. And I told everybody, and he kind of got embarrassed, because then I told the group leader that I don't know what she was, but between Laura and him was the middle Alice, and she always sided with him, and they were like two evil twins, walking around just trying to get the numbers and just harassing employees, and they would tell you, you're a bad I would walk by a table and she would say, you're just a bad employee, you're not working hard, you don't work, you this and that, and just, talking down to people. That's all they did, just travel around and talk down to people. And with me, I would argue with her. It's like, no, I do it, show me your, let me see you do it, and she couldn't do what I could do. I could run the machines twice as fast. And I think I kind of intimidated her a little bit, and I was real vocal and real, I didn't put up with her crap. And when I told her, I went up to her on lunch. I said, can you keep your stupid, stinking buddy away from my house? How did he get my address? And, I was real rude, and I was just yelling it real loud in front of everybody. I kind of embarrassed her, but I was like, what are you two thinking? And what were you thinking? Letting him come to my house? I blamed it on her, because he was always drunk, and, it was like, can't you keep him under control, or something like that. And he was married with 2 kids, and he separated from her. And then this is after I quit working there. I learned that he got this really sweet, nice girl. I think she was either Filipino or maybe Vietnamese girl. She's very quiet, just came from, another country, could barely speak English. And she was very, very sweet, very, very pretty. And I don't know how he did this, manipulated her. She was very young. Somehow he brainwashed, manipulated her into a relationship. She got pregnant, and then they got married, and I think they had another kid. And they eventually got divorced. And I was talking to somebody that still, I think, worked with him or knew, we just happened to bump into each other somewhere, and we were talking about all the horrible stuff. And she goes, do you know that he's divorced from that, I don't remember her name, sweet girl, and she had another baby? And I was like, really? Ugh. Once was enough. How could she do it twice, And now he's stuck with like 5 or 6 kids on 4 or 5. I don't know how many kids he has. I think he had 3 with his first wife and 2 with her, of child support. And he got fired from that plant because he gave out personal information, like the way he found my address. He was going through files, and he was holding things over people's head and trying to blackmail them, and any kind of personal information. And he got fired for that. And then he went to another business, and he got fired. I can't remember what for, but it was like something, inappropriate and wrong, and got fired from that. And then a few years later, he was working at a home improvement center, and I was there with my ex-husband, and we were there to get like a plunger or a few little odd and just things that everybody knows what they are, like a plunger or a faucet or something. I don't remember what, it had something to do with the bathroom, I think. I can't remember, but just a regular item that everybody knows what it is. And when I saw the guy, I was like, oh my God. My ex-husband just turned around, and we couldn't find what we were looking for, and he just asked the guy, the employee, and my ex-boss, and I was like, oh, and I turned my head. I was like, oh God, why do you have to pick this person? And he was like, now what is it? What does it look like? And my husband was like, like describing it to him, and he asked him, like, made him say it like 5 or 6 times, it was so frustrating to watch that. And then I turned around and said, I yelled, where is it at? And all the customers turned around and looked, and And he goes, over there, like, and I was like, wow, I wanted a number, I wanted specifics. Over there, he did the same thing to me that he did at that job, and so let's go, And then I told my ex-husband, the whole situation, how he was, and it made my ex-husband really mad. And he goes, yeah, I know. He acted weird, and like I said, he was doing that on purpose. Everybody knows what a plunger is, or whatever it was we're looking for. Everybody knows what it is. He was doing that to you on purpose. He's just a jerk, and he gets away with it. He works like that everywhere he works at. He does stuff like that. And so my ex-husband called the company headquarters or whatever, complained, and I don't know what happened. I don't care, but he got stuck with a bunch of child support, so that's karma for him, and he got fired from a bunch of jobs, so because of his behavior. And the company parties I never went to except for one, and I just didn't want to go to anymore. And they had one in the summertime, and it was at the plant in the front. There's some picnic tables, and the next day I came to work, and did you hear what happened? And they were telling me, oh, it was just a drunken brawl. People got into fights, and they had to break it up, and it was just crazy and wild. And one of the girls got on the table and took her shirt, pulled her shirt up, and showed everybody, and her glory. And her husband was a veterinarian, and he did a boob job on her in his vet place. And she went around the plant showing people. And I had known about that before, and they were telling me, do you want to see them? I was like, no, I don't. I don't care, no. And she would show them to anybody, and I was like, no. And the next day, the owner of the plant, he put out a paper detailing, like, at the next function, if we have a function, there will be no drinking and no blah blah this and that. He had to put out rules and all this stuff because people just thought it was a wild party because of the behavior there at that plant anyway. So they thought, it was okay. And I wrote a big long letter to him about Laura and the whole situation and how she was, and a lot of other things I complained about. And he was perturbed that I brought it to his attention because he was kind of that kind of person, I guess. But he was real educated, real smart. He had like 2 or 3 degrees, engineering, double E, whatever. He spoke another language, I think Italian or something, I don't remember. And, very, very, you wouldn't think, he was like living in the gutter half the time. He had like a double life. He was one of those kind of people. And he ran the company into the ground. But before that, before I quit, I called and complained to him, or not to him, to the IRS and to several other agencies about things that may or may not have been illegal or something like that. And he went through a bunch of legal problems because of it. And all I wanted him to do was just to clean it up, just make it safe for, where I didn't have to be harassed every day at work, other employees. It was just a horrible place. If you were not in upper level management or anywhere like that, employees were just harassed. It was really awful there. I still remember it, and it's still 30-something years later. Still, I'm still get incensed sometimes when I think about the things that went on there. And his wife left him, and he lost his company, and he ran it into the ground, and he ended up being some kind of salesperson for some product kind of related to the industry. But he lost everything because he just didn't care. He wanted to, I don't know, just party and be secretly. I've worked at a lot of places where the upper level management or the owner has a double life. They act like they want to be respected as a business person, but the other side of them is, not caring and drinking and going out and, just carousing around with women of ill repute or whatever you want to call them. And I've worked for several companies with men who own or who live that life, and he was like that. And one of the the guys there. He was, this is kind of sad because he was mentally affected. I don't know really what was wrong with him. I was very young then, and I really didn't know. I was scared of him. He would go around and threaten people and tell them, I'm going to do this to you and this and that. And he was real weird, and nobody wanted to work around him, and nobody wanted anything to do with him. And he was extremely creepy, and, you know, he needed help. He needed so much mental health help, and they didn't. They just would tell us, well, just stay out of his way, you know, and they didn't do anything about it. There was always an incident with him. Something would always happen, and they did nothing. And then I believe that he assaulted one of the, I want to say mechanics, or he did something, and then like slashed tires or broke one. I don't remember what he did really, but he did something to the point where I think the police had to be called, or eventually they did fire him. And actually I'm not going to use his name, but he did try to take his own life. And I think they fired him for not showing up, because something that I thought, of all the things they could have fired him for, they fired him for that. You know, I was like, and he worked there for a long time, and like they didn't have any way to, they didn't think of, you know, they were going to allow him to work there all those years, and they should have helped him, you know. And it was just the mentality of the way that they would think. It was just a very dangerous place. And well, there's probably 10 other stories about that place. I mean, if I could think hard enough. I mean, there was always something horrible or, you know, just awful happening there. Well, thank you very much, and I'll do another video in a few days. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe.